Welcome, listeners, to episode 29 of the Running Guide podcast, where I aim to provide informative content and interviews with elite athletes and health professionals from around the world, like in today's episode, where I'm chatting to a Kiwi runner currently living and working abroad in London. He's a 210 guy. Welcome to the Running Guide podcast, Malcolm Hicks. How you going, mate?
Thanks, Aston. Yeah, good, thank you.
You just relocated in London, is that correct?
Yes, I've been in London with my wife Alana for about 2.5 years now, and we just relocated from a fairly central on the east side, East London, to Teddington, which is, I guess you can still say it's in London, but it's a wee way from the city, so down southwest, so close to Bushy Park and Richmond Park, which are kind of the two mecca running locations of London.
Bushy
Yeah,
Park,
so
that's famous
it's
for the
kind of
start of park run, isn't it?
I think it is. Yeah, you're right. It's Teddington is and
Okay.
Bushy Park are kind of the hot spots of running in London. You've got St Mary's University, which is nearby, and that's one of the two big sports universities.
Yeah.
So they have a lot of athletes on scholarship, and I mean your Aussie listeners will probably recognise Teddington from where the Melbourne Track Club base themselves in the summer. So yeah, it's a nice little town. Fairly much like living in the suburbs, which is a bit of a change for me. But yeah, no, it's brilliant, and we're enjoying it.
Okay. And you're obviously working nearby?
My wife and I both work in the city,
Right.
but we've been working from home since the beginning of March.
Oh, okay.
So yeah, being able to, well, I'm not going to be back in the office for a long time now.
Yeah.
So we decided to make the move out, which I guess part of previously living relatively central is both our offices were on the east side of the city. So I used to run commute back and forth into the city, and that kind of, was only 20 minutes from home to the office. But, it was the tail end of my morning run and, the start of my evening run getting home. So now we don't need to be near the office, and I can avoid any sort of commute because I just wouldn't bother if it was, it involved a train, a tube, and a bus,
Yeah,
which
okay.
is most people's London commutes. So yeah, it's being able to work from home has kind of allowed us the ability to move further afield and be based somewhere a bit more, well, a nicer place to train, really.
Yeah, yeah. So what is that work?
Mhm.
And do you have flexibility on your hours?
Yeah, I'm an engineer. So I work for we do design. So I work for a consultancy in the city. And I mean, I wouldn't say particularly flexible. I've recently cut hours down to 4 days. So I have Wednesdays off, which is typically like a big workout, big marathon workout day. So that's been really nice. And yeah, I mean, around that, Monday, Tuesday, Thursday, that's just two easy runs for me. So it's not too hard fitting it around work. Friday morning is usually a workout before work, but yeah. So I mean, it works. I wouldn't say it's ideal. It's busy, but I've managed to fit both running and work in so far, and it kind of I enjoy the balance it gives me. It takes my mind off running, and yeah, gives me something else to balance out the day.
Yeah, obviously the days are going to get shorter and colder over there, with the opposite of here, which is great for us. But I saw an Instagram account back in, I guess it was August, a couple of months ago, some training in St. Moritz. Tell us about that.
Yeah, so I guess part of now being a full-time work from homer, we were able to relocate for a couple of months to Europe. We'd been in lockdown in London. It was pretty rough. I was based fairly centrally, and being in the middle of a big city in lockdown is not particularly nice. So we were working from home in our small one-bedroom apartment, which was never made for two people to have a home office in as well. And we just needed a break, so we packed up our apartment, got rid of that, put everything in storage, and went to St. Moritz for maybe 2 months.
Mm.
And travel in Europe was opening up at the time, so it was relatively safe. And yeah, I guess the fact we stayed in Europe instead of kind of rushing back to New Zealand at the start of it allowed us that opportunity, which was good. And it's something that I wanted to, I wanted to become familiar with St. Moritz. I hadn't been before, because I'll be using it in my Tokyo build-up, all going to plan. So yeah, we got over there. It was great. We just did our normal work from home, and yeah, got some amazing training in over there.
Yeah, I heard it's beautiful. Man, I've been there on holiday, but I didn't go running around the trails. But apparently, it's got pretty much everything a runner would want.
Yeah, I mean, for years everyone said, what's your favorite place to run? It's always St. Moritz.
Yeah,
So I knew I was in for something special, but yeah, it truly is a beautiful place. And with still the COVID situation over here, it really felt like, I mean, we almost forgot about it for the first time in about 7 or 8 months.
yeah,
You're up in the mountains. It's a small town. It's filthy expensive, so you're not dining out. So the only kind of indoor place we'd ever go is the supermarket, and all your activities were outdoor, and
yeah.
they look after athletes amazingly. They have a fantastic gym which is just for kind of elite sports teams and athletes. And yeah, they look after you really well. They kind of give you a whole lot of perks and benefits if you're an elite athlete. So yeah, they've really created a high altitude training hub there, which is pretty amazing.
Yeah, yeah, you're a 210 guy, mate. They should be opening the door for you as you're approaching, yeah. But
Well, a few more doors are opening these days.
yeah,
Yeah.
no, that's good, mate. So it should. I saw there, if I can get you to explain that you went to Italy for 2 weeks to avoid the quarantining in London. How does that work? Is that right?
Yeah, correct. So I guess when we headed to Switzerland, we thought, well, Switzerland has dealt with COVID really well this entire time. So we thought it was a fairly safe place to go. A few people were sneaking holidays to Spain and Italy, which had kind of had a rough start early on in COVID. But it turns out there was a few clusters and outbreaks in Zurich and Geneva. So then the whole of Switzerland went on the quarantine list, which meant you had to quarantine when you returned to the UK. It wasn't a full-on hotel quarantine. There was some reasonable fines if you were caught breaking it. They check up on you, etc. So you're supposed to quarantine at home. So that actually meant no leaving the house, for training.
Yeah,
Yeah, Switzerland was on the quarantine list, but it turned out Italy wasn't. So they actually, until recently, once their main peak died down, they kept their numbers really low, all through the summer. So we just essentially popped over the border because St. Moritz is really close to Italy. So we just popped down to a small town called Collico on Lake Como, and yeah, had 2 weeks there while we did our quarantine on the way home, which, I mean, I don't think anyone's going to complain with 2 weeks in Italy on Lake Como.
yes, like Como is better than four walls in the ceiling, mate. That's for sure.
Exactly. Yeah.
Yeah.
So some beautiful running, lots of pizza, lots of gelato, and yeah, lived the little Italian life for a couple of weeks, and then headed home. I mean, it was late spring. Things were kind of starting to pick up COVID wise. We knew winter was coming, so we thought it was time to get back to the UK and get set up for the winter, because I mean, as we found out now, everyone was heading towards lockdown again. The numbers were all increasing, so we knew we had to get home and get settled again for the winter.
All right, mate. Let's run through your personal best, and if you can just sort of give us some details or stories or anything you remember about these events. Kicking off at 800 metres, 1:52:01 in Belgium, July 2011.
Yep, that was in Liège, I think. And myself and Hayden McLaren, another Kiwi, just found a small meet and went out and had a fun time. But I think that was maybe the first time I came over to Europe and did some racing. So yeah, definitely not an 800 guy, but I mean, still a fun race and memorable one.
1500, 3:42:67 over here, Albert Park, Melbourne. Yeah, April 2013. So 3:42 is not too bad.
Yeah, no, that was. I've run 3:42 a few times. I never managed to crack that 3:40 barrier, which was, I thought I was the 1500 guy for a long time, but I think I ran 3:42 and sub 4 half a dozen times. But that was Melbourne. No, that was Albert Park. I think the first time I ran 3:42 was at the Olympic Park. So it must have been the last year that racing was at Olympic Park in Melbourne.
Okay.
So yeah, Melbourne's delivered a couple of good times for me.
Yeah. Where would you have finished in that race with the 3:42?
I can definitely remember the first time at Olympic Park, which
Yeah.
must have been about 2011, and I was second to last. Uh, there was a lot of people in the race. It was the year that Kiprop was there, Nick Willis was there, Collis Birmingham, I think Alan Webb, Will Lear. They were all in the 1500, and then it was the year that like Bernard Legat was in the 5K, Rudisha was in the 800.
Okay.
Amazing year. So I think I went from a 344 to a 342 that day, so big PB. Second to last. I was throwing up for about half an hour, trying to warm down around the track afterwards. It was, but yeah, it was that was a special one. I think I remember I got a photo with Bernard Legat and Rudisha afterwards. So for a young track runner, that was and competing at that level with Olympic gold medalists in the race, and that was a special one.
Yeah, no, great memories. Yeah, 1 mile, sub 4 there, 3:59.87, Wanganui, 2012, over there in New Zealand.
Yes,
Just got under, mate.
That was again a memorable one. I think there was maybe 5 of us that went sub 4 that day. So, and I think it was the first time for a fellow Kiwi, Hamish Carson, as well. And yeah, so we had Nick Willis, myself, Hamish Carson, and then a couple of Nick's American training partners. So yeah, that was a special race, especially to be done in Wanganui, where world records have been set in the mile, and has a really a long history with miling in New Zealand.
How many attempts did you have at the 1 mile, like a proper 1 mile?
I didn't run many.
Yeah.
I think I ran 401, 4 flat. They were in Europe potentially. There's a race in Ireland that runs a mile regularly. But I think in New Zealand, I only ran once, maybe twice over the mile.
So, do they give you a special trophy for a sub 4 mile, mate? Like something up on the mantelpiece?
No,
No.
I don't think anything. No, I think they tried to. I think they maybe made some, the small caps, like the retro, the ones that cricketers wear, and
Yeah.
I think they made some of those, but I never got my hands on one because I've been away for a few years, so I need to chase up on that. But I think they did do a little memorabilia cap for a few of the sub 4 milers at Cook's Garden in Wanganui.
Cool. 3,000 metres, 7:58.58, Wellington, January 2013.
Yep, Wellington is where we always have the New Zealand 3K champs.
Okay.
So yeah, that was New Zealand champs. I think I was second and third a couple of times there, but it's always a good race. It's always windy in Wellington, and it's always a championship 3K, so it's never really on from the start. It's more championship racing. But yeah, I've run well a few times there, and they always put on a great meet.
Would that be an evening meet or during the day? Do they do like a special evening under lights for that race?
Yep. No, they do. Yeah. So it's an evening race, and they they always work it around the athletes, and put on a good event. It's not the hot mid-afternoon kind of old school club racing scenario.
All right, 5,000 metres, 13:37.31 in Belgium, 2017. That's moving.
Yeah, that was in Housden in Belgium, which has delivered me 2 PBs over the 5K. It's a famous 5K meet, and it's fast racing over the 5, and everyone kind of battles to get in the A race there. I think that would have been the B race that year, which I've run a couple of times, but that was my last race on the track.
Okay.
So finished with a small PB. It was a horrific night of torrential rain, but yeah, no, it was great. I didn't realize it would be my last race on the track at the time, but I guess looking back, I'm kind of happy that I finished on that note.
Definitely.
Yeah.
No, for sure. That's a great time. 10,000 metres, Zatopek, 28:58.90 in 2015, finishing in 5th spot. Was that your first?
Yeah.
I assume that's your first sub 29.
It was. Yep. That's the only one. So I think I've only run 2 on the, I think I ran 2 on the track. So yeah, the 10Ks, I think that's one race I have a bit of unfinished business on. So I might be stepping back on the track, hopefully, if I can kind of, stay healthy enough. And
Sure.
the track beats me up pretty hard these days. So yeah, I haven't been on it much the last couple of years, but yeah, I really would like to get back and have a crack at something a bit quicker over the 10K, definitely.
Yeah, no, that's a good time. I mean, without getting into a discussion about shoes, maybe the new the new spikes may not beat your legs around as much. Hopefully, so yeah, certainly.
Yeah, I'll definitely try them on.
5K on the road. I mean, IAAF always have this. I should call them World Athletics now. Always have this Noosa Bolt. It must be the only road race 5K that they put on their schedule. So they got you down there 14:12 in 2013.
Yeah, I think that is the only 5K I've run on the road, but that's the only time I've been to Noosa.
Sure.
But yeah, it was fun.
Yeah,
It's
it
a
is a fun
fantastic
weekend.
event.
Yeah.
Yeah, great crowd. Some tight corners on that course, but it makes for fun racing. Yeah, so that was a great time. I'll have to try and go back. I'll have to try and run 14:12 again.
Yeah, well, it's a great place to hang out, isn't it? That's for sure.
Yeah,
Mate,
absolutely.
10K, 29:28 on the Goldie, 2015.
Yes, that was. Who did I get out kicked by? Marty Dent.
Marty, eh? Yeah.
He sat on me for a very long time. And at the time I was thinking, this old guy's out kicking me with about 500 meters to go. I couldn't believe it. But he made a good move, kind of. I think with maybe less than a K to go, you come off a bridge and hang a left back onto the main road. And it's a little rise, and he just made a perfect move around there and just left me, and I could never get it back. So yeah, I mean, that was a fun race. He taught me, he gave me a lesson in racing that day, I think. But yeah, it was a fun time. I haven't actually run many 10Ks on the road. So yeah, again, that's definitely a distance on the road I'd like to have another decent crack at.
Half marathon, 65:39 over there in Christchurch, May 2015.
Yes, I've run not much faster. In the Netherlands, I ran a 64:25, which I don't think got picked up on the IAAF. But yeah, that one's relatively well out of date. I again just haven't managed to kind of line up in a half marathon in the last few years when I've been healthy and fit. So yeah, that one is definitely, hopefully, on the chopping block early next year when we're back into some racing. It's actually not much faster than the second half of my last marathon. So yeah, I think there's fair to say there's some improvement to be made there.
And the marathon, mate, the big one. We'll go more into detail about this soon, but yeah, 2:10:04. 2:10:04 in Seville, February this year, mate. That's awesome.
Yeah, no, it was. I think officially it's 2:10:05. Just
take
to
the
not
four,
claim
take
any,
the four.
not claim.
It's on World Athletics as 04, mate.
I don't know what the confusion is.
Yeah.
Yeah, I don't know what the confusion is. But anyway, yeah, that was February this year in Seville. I mean, the race of my career, really. Until I run faster, it's going to be an incredibly memorable one for me. It was just one of those days where everything came together, and I essentially had an unbroken preparation. No niggles, no setbacks. I think the only days I had off were I returned to New Zealand over the summer for Christmas, and the 2 flights there and then back were the only days I had off running, kind of in that last 12-14 weeks. So yeah, no, it's that was a fantastic race for me.
Yeah, no, look, I really want to get more into that soon. Let's head back to where it all began, mate. Where did you start running? Were you sort of involved in other sports when you're growing up as well at a competitive level, or?
Yeah, definitely. So, I mean, I think you guys call it Little A's, kids athletics.
Yep.
In New Zealand, in Auckland, where I grew up. I've got 2 older brothers, so I just did everything they did. And mum and dad, they were both involved in athletics when they were younger and a lot of sports. So we played soccer in the winter. We played tennis in the summer and athletics. Those were kind of our main sports. And I grew up racing my brothers, so I don't think there's many kids with older siblings that aren't competitive.
And which part of New Zealand did you grow up in? Sorry,
in Auckland.
Okay, yep.
Yeah. So I've kind of been involved in that club athletics scene for through my primary school years and intermediate, and kind of picked up again with the Harriers in high school. But yeah, no, I've always been involved in a lot of sport and athletics from an early age.
Did your older brothers take it as, well, obviously not as far as what you did, but did they continue into a competitive level, or was it just more at that age?
No, it was just more at that age.
Yep.
Through high school, definitely they did. I mean, they were, they're both great athletes, and they took their soccer a lot further than I did, and played at a fairly high club level for a while. So yeah, no, I'm the only one to carry on as far as I have.
So you little A's and all that. So you've never stopped running, like you never had a couple of years off and played other sports, or you've always just kept running?
No, I've definitely had some time off. I guess through high school, I had, I think the last couple of years at high school, and then maybe first or second year at university, I had 3 surgeries from ankle and foot injuries. So that essentially put running on the back burner for a few of those years, which it would have been nice to be in the position to try and take a scholarship in the US or that, but I was broken and didn't have any racing on my resume. So yeah, that was unfortunate.
And those injuries were from running?
Yes, yeah. So some stress fractures, a couple of bone spurs taken out, and things like that. So they were all kind of long-winded recoveries.
Yeah. And this is in your late teens?
Yeah. So late teens, late teens up to about age 20, 21.
Yeah, okay.
So yeah, running was definitely on the back burner. I started riding. I did a lot of swimming. I raced a couple of triathlons just for fun. But then so that was kind of through my undergrad in Auckland, at the University of Auckland, and then moved to University of Canterbury in Christchurch, and found myself a bit healthier. Got plugged into the running scene down there, just kind of bumped into a few guys around the park, and got to know them, and got really stuck into the running scene down there. And that's when I guess through maybe 21, 22, 23, got back into competitive running again, and started racing on the track, which was I think just a factor of that environment, primarily being down there with such a great group.
So you picked up 2 national championships, 3,000 metres, running 8:07.94 in Dunedin in 2012, and also in the 5,000 metres, you ran 13:47 in 2014. So
I think there was a period of about 3 or 4 years where I medalled in every national championship I raced, which was nice. That was over 1,500, 3K, 5K, 10K in cross country. So yeah, I think the biggest surprise for me was the 2 cross country titles, which I think surprised a few other people as well.
Yeah.
and haven't run any cross country since. It's not my favorite event, but yeah, no, it was. I was just fit and strong, and had a couple of good races.
And the senior cross country titles you're talking about?
Yes, correct.
Wow. So what, Worlds? Did you go over to Worlds if you're winning the national title?
No. So that was, I guess they were both off years, I think.
Okay.
So I had a break in between those 2 years where I ended up having another surgery. I had a tendon repair on my perineal. So I think Worlds were the year that I had off. And then I won the New Zealand Cross titles on either side of that. World Cross in New Zealand is it's a self-funded event. It's always very expensive. Unless, I guess, if you really want to take the opportunity, that's fantastic. But it's an expensive trip away. Yeah, I from memory, I don't think it lined up with the years that I won National Cross.
Let's just start talking about your marathoning. Now you've only ran 4 marathons in total, is that right?
Yes.
Yep.
Yep. So
Yep.
four marathons in maybe the last, I think it's only about the last 2 years, really.
Yeah, yeah. So I got your first one here debuted in Berlin. So that's September 18, 2:16:28. So let's talk about how you prepared for your first marathon. Yeah, just talk about how that race went and what your expectations were. And
Yeah, absolutely. I actually tried to run a marathon, I think about 6 months before that,
okay,
but ended up, yeah, having a few injury problems. So it was a bit of a delayed start. But it was, I guess I had recently moved to London. I did a lot of my training with a guy, Paul Martelletti, a Kiwi who's been in London for a long time, and he's a 2:16 marathoner, and has run 2:16, 2:17 multiple times. So yeah, that was fantastic. I mean, there's so much to learn in your first marathon. Which I think is part of the reason I really enjoyed the experience, because I've raced on the track a long time. I've done quite a bit of racing on the roads in the Netherlands when I was living there, and yeah, I mean, it's just such a different event, and the trial and error and the learning that goes into it. So it was great to kind of get that feedback from Paul. I knew if I was kind of keeping up with him on long runs and workouts, I was in that range of 2:16, 2:17. But it was my first marathon, and everyone had kind of, well, a few people have said, just make sure you enjoy the first one. Be conservative. Don't kind of, I guess, don't roll the dice too much. Just get one under your belt, because the improvements you can make and the learning you make is just so important for going forward. And having a bad experience on your first one, when you only get to race a marathon every 6 months, if all going well, it's a long time to rebuild after a terrible experience. So I went into it relatively conservatively. But yeah, really enjoyed the training. I guess it wasn't too much of a bump in mileage for me. I'd kind of been running around that 100-mile mark, so I think I only really got up to about 170, 175 in that build up. And yeah, it was great. I enjoy fast long runs. I like big long workouts. So some people find that type of stuff a real grind, but I was kind of thriving in it. And yeah, picked Berlin. My manager got me a start in Berlin, which was great. My half marathon time wasn't that great at the time, and managed to get an elite start there. It was the same year Kipchoge set the world record.
I was just thinking
So
that. Yeah.
to be in, yeah, to be in that race was phenomenal. There was a lot of hype around it, and just to be on the start line. I mean, it's a fantastic race, and there's a lot of history there, so that was a lot of fun. And we had a big group early on. I think I was running with the lead female group, and then got to about halfway and was kind of getting itchy feet, and wanted to kick on. And myself and Julian Spence, we kind of peeled away, and ran most of the second half together. And yeah, ran I think a 90-second negative split there, and yeah, had a great time. I mean, there could have been more in the tank that day, with a big negative split like that, but I wouldn't have changed it. I had a great experience. I loved it, and I was just chomping at the bit to build up and run my second one.
Yeah, well, it sounds like the perfect first marathon, like you said, to go into it with that approach and to get that result, and still know you had something left in the tank. A lot of us go into the race with that idea, but it's executing it's a different story. So you've done well there, mate. You would have been holding weekly volume close to marathon training, or did you increase it when you started to do the marathon training? You would have always been doing double runs, I assume, when you're on the track.
Yeah. So like I said, I'd been running about 100 miles, so I definitely bumped it a little bit. And I guess, when you take out that intensity of, track work and, those lactic sessions, you can kind of, your legs can handle, I found my legs would handle the volume relatively easily. So, I previously I'd kind of had a bit of a ceiling at 100 miles where I'd broken down previously. Injuries had cropped up, and any time I'd pushed over 100 miles. So, we took it quite conservatively in terms of pushing that number. By the time you're doing 35 to 38k every Sunday, you're doing a 35k's of including a marathon workout on Wednesdays. The volume creeps up fairly easily. And then I was commuting in and out of the office, so that was doubles. Monday to Friday, really. So yeah, the mileage just came, but thankfully I found that the body was handling it relatively well.
Yeah, okay. 7 months later, at the end of April, you went over and raced Dusseldorf in Germany, running 2 minutes 37 seconds faster, posting a 2:13:51. So between Berlin, September 18 and April 19, did you make any changes in your training to go quicker, or that was just the normal progression that you would expect with more Ks in your leg and a bit more experience?
Yeah, correct. I think it was just that consistency, and I had a really consistent block, and I essentially replicated the same marathon build up. I think things got pushed a bit further. Long runs got consistently a bit longer. Yeah, I think that was just building on strength and consistency. So not a lot changed. I think the mileage got pushed again a little bit, but that was more of a result of probably better quality workouts and slightly longer, or being more comfortable with slightly longer long runs. So nothing conscious really in terms of we're going to push the mileage. It just kind of it came a little bit.
And was Dusseldorf just the right time of year to do a race, or was there any other particular reason you picked that course?
I didn't even know Dusseldorf Marathon existed at the time.
No, I don't either.
Yeah. They normally, I think it's been a bronze label IAAF race previously, and this year was they had a few German athletes. It was the German Championships,
Okay.
Which is quite a big event in Germany, and the race was set up so it was the same year as Doha World Champs. So 2:16 was the qualifier. I'd just run 2:16:25-ish the year before, so I knew I could run under 2:16, and the whole race was set up around getting Doha qualifiers. So they had a few German guys they wanted to get qualifiers, and my manager just assured me. He said, "Look, if you want to get a qualifier for Doha, this is the race to do it. It's not a very fast course. It's very windy. It can be very windy. It's along the river. But I knew if we've got pacemakers, we've got a good group of guys, all hitting that time. So I committed to that, and it was great. I found myself running for the win. I eventually got second, but yeah, it was we had a great group of guys. A bunch of us got the time, and we went through halfway on time, probably on track for about 2:15:30. So we were comfortably under. I was feeling really good, and pacemakers dropped out, and I kind of led the second half of the race for the majority of it. Just trying to break guys. Just trying to break them one by one. Unfortunately, one German guy hung on to me, and I didn't have it in the last 200 meters. So, yeah, but to run that time to get the qualifier for World Champs, I was thrilled. Again, we went in fairly conservatively. Just knowing that look, today's about getting a World Champs qualifier, just getting that time. So, made sure I got to halfway on track and then kind of let loose from there. I think, again, I ran about a 90-second negative split in that race. So, yeah, after that, I still knew there was more in the tank. But, I was happy just to get the time and get confirmed for Doha.
Yeah, no, it's a great opening 2 marathons, mate. And let's move on to Doha. So that's 5 months later. Now, that would have been your first black singlet, is that right?
Yeah, correct. That was my first major championship for New Zealand. So we had this kind of strange black, silver, white singlet tier system. So yeah, the black singlet events are just, I think, Com Games, World Champs, and Olympics.
Awesome.
So yeah, first time with the black singlet, which was awesome.
Yeah, and there was another Kiwi there with you. Is that right?
Yes, Caden Shields.
Okay.
So he got his qualifier in Gold Coast. So he had a fairly tight turnaround from Gold Coast to Doha, but Doha was quite late. So I think the marathon was early October.
Yep.
So yeah, it was it worked out well for him also.
So you ran 2:17:45, finishing in 29th spot, first Kiwi home. What sort of prep did you sort of do for Doha? I mean, obviously there was the heat, there was that strange midnight start, it was running up and down that strip, yeah, on that hot dog course. So first of all, how did you go about preparing for the heat? How did you go about, preparing for the conditions that you thought that you were going to have, with that strange environment to run in?
Yeah, it was an experience, definitely. And again, like, learning the marathon's one thing, learning a hot marathon at midnight is another. So Athletics New Zealand, they set up a couple of heat camps in Cyprus. So they invested quite heavily in, I guess, the learnings, because Tokyo was going to be hot also. And they, 12 months out, we can get our athletes there, get a whole lot of testing, learn how they adapt, learn how they manage the heat, how they can perform in the heat, and then come Tokyo, we're not learning those things in the 6 months beforehand. We've already got a whole lot of data, and we're building on what we learned earlier. So yeah, that was great. We had the first camp, I think, was July, August. So I went out for about 3 weeks. And just kind of worked remotely and had a training camp out there. I was joined by Cameron Graves, another Kiwi who came over and was a training partner over there with me. So that was awesome. We had a great time. And yeah, so we were essentially just every run we were monitoring our hydration, nutrition, our weights before and after. So seeing what fluid loss was like. We had Matthew Mildenhall, our physiologist, was over there. So we were, taking temperature measurements. He was doing kind of perceptive, scales on dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea, all of these things, which just, very, very perceptual and quite hard to monitor. But, we were, I guess at the time, it didn't make a lot of sense, picking, 1 to 10 on how dizzy you felt or how nauseous you felt. But, when you actually looked back at all those numbers and saw the improvements from your first workout to, 3 weeks in, it was really interesting. So we were taking these little electronic, you can, if you swallow an electronic pill, and it starts recording, it does your internal temperature.
Okay. Wow.
So we use that a couple of times. It's a disposable pill. We used that a couple of times and on key long runs, and then we did some like pre-cooling procedures. So looked at the effect on your internal temperature of using pre-cooling before a long run or not using pre-cooling, and kind of I think we did maybe 3 Sundays where I did a steady long run, 2.5 hours. And we looked at how I performed over those 3 days. And you can kind of, track your, I guess, the same way you have a heart rate drift. You'd have like a core temperature drift, it would just creep up and creep up and creep up. And we could look at, how high it got, how fast it got up there. And, then the influence of pre-cooling and the delay that produced in terms of your increase in core temperature. So yeah, we did quite a lot of testing and monitoring while we were there.
So what sort of temperatures were you running
fantastic. So it was, trying to replicate Doha conditions anywhere is quite hard, because it's, the Middle East is kind of a unique heat. It's a bit different to everywhere. So, and also midnight, you wouldn't have the sunlight. So the burning skin temperature, which you get under the sun. So we were doing, usually about 10:30 in the morning sun was up. So you had the added heat stress of the sun. It was still quite humid because typically it's more humid overnight when the sun goes down, and then it kind of, as the sun comes up, it burns off the humidity a bit. So the morning was still hot. So it was, getting up 36 degrees, and you'd still have, 70-75% humidity. So I think we were targeting, the most humid part of the morning, but also the hottest part of the day.
Yep.
So yeah, I think most of our long runs were kind of 75%, 80% humidity and about 33 degrees. But it would go up a couple of degrees during that time because you're kind of finishing around 11:30 a.m. midday.
Look, all that data is fantastic, but what did you actually feel yourself, like perception-wise, when you're over there training? Could you actually feel your body actually being able to deal with or absorb the conditions of the heat?
Yeah, all I have to remember back to is my first workout,
Mm.
which was, I think, the third day we were there, which was a little bit of a test. I'd done 1 or 2 runs in a heat chamber
Mm.
in London, and we tried to pick up the pace and run a bit quicker and do a small workout, and I was all over the place. It was horrific. So the heat chamber was not a fun time, but there was zero adaptation at that point. So it was kind of looking at what a baseline looks like. And then we did our first workout on I think on maybe the third day, maybe the fourth day when we were in Cyprus, and that was pretty horrific. Just dizziness, lightheadedness, nausea. Obviously we kind of stopped before it got to any risky point, but it gave us an idea of what it was like trying to perform in that sort of heat. But then by 1 weekend, so I did my first long run, probably day 6, day 7. I think it was 2 hours 15 maybe. It was steady. We were running kind of 320s, 330s for the last 10K, and I felt great. So just within that short period, I noticed a huge change in adaptation, and that kind of fit with the data, and what we understood from adaptation, that within 5 to 6 days you should be seeing some fairly good adaptation to the heat. So yeah, I noticed a huge change, and from there, definitely some small improvements, and workouts got better. But I think that was also, learning, nutrition and hydration beforehand and during, and how to manage that correctly. So yeah, no, definitely saw improvements just massively within that first week.
Yeah, no, it's very fascinating, isn't it? It's amazing how the body can adjust so quickly with, I mean, you could probably do that without the science. I mean, it's all about what your body would actually adapt to by itself without actually having like pre-cooling and getting the science right with the nutrition and the hydration. Yeah, it's very interesting.
I mean, just immersing yourself in the conditions,
Yeah.
you're going to adapt. But
Mm.
it was nice to see some numbers behind it too.
Oh, of course, that's what it's all about, definitely. And
Mm,
also,
mm,
yeah, like the Aussies were doing, and Julian, that was all about getting data for Tokyo for sure.
yeah, absolutely.
Tell us about the race. How did it go? And yeah, what were the hours leading into it? Starting at midnight, it would have been strange. Eating and sleeping patterns would have had to been adjusted. Did you adjust that leading into the race? I mean, there's so many little facets there to sort of go through.
Yeah, so we spent another kind of 2.5 weeks in Cyprus, before. So we headed straight from Cyprus to Doha. But it was late September at that point, so it was kind of cooling down, and I mean, still so hard to replicate those conditions. As soon as we landed and went for our first jog in Doha, it was. We thought we had been in the heat, in Cyprus, and we thought we were fairly well adapted, and we got a shock. Those first couple of nights. But I think it was a smaller step up that was required,
Mm.
as opposed to not having done that heat preparation earlier. So yeah, it was hot, and then we had been doing evening workouts, trying to push them a bit later to get used to that midnight time. But a big part of that for me was nutrition during the day, what you ate, and because we're just not used to working out at midnight. So it was kind of cutting out fiber, to kind of keep your guts under control, and things like that. So yeah, we started as soon as we landed. I think I had about 5 or 6 days in Doha pre-race. So we were did a tune up late at night. We were kind of doing our runs about 10 p.m., 10:30 p.m. and just getting used to that, because yeah, more so in Doha, it got super humid at night when the sun went down. Temperature dropped a little bit as well, which was good, but yeah, just getting used to that. Your shoes just, they even in a hotel room with AC, and you just can't get them dry before your next run because they're just absolutely drenched. It was fairly gross, but yeah, no, it was leading into the race. Yeah, like I said, we pushed the start time out to get used to that evening, and trying to sleep a bit more during the day. I'm not very good at napping, but yeah, trying to get a few more, 30-minute or an hour during the day just to push that evening out. But I mean, in terms of being awake, there's so much adrenaline. I don't think that was much of an issue.
Did you get out to the stadium
start time
to watch any other events while you were there?
Yeah, I got out once or twice. It was, I guess, a bit of an ordeal in terms of getting the buses there and everything. So I didn't go too much, just to try and not wear myself out. I think I was still working at the time, so I think I had a couple of stressful days at work before the race. But that was good. It kind of helped pass the time, which was nice. Otherwise, you're just sitting in a hotel room for a very long time beforehand. So I went out and watched a couple of the Kiwis and their events before the race, which was nice. Yeah, come race day, it was we had a schedule all planned out, food, everything, so we just followed that. Got to the race start where we had booked in. They had a number of ice baths all set up. So we went through our preparation, did our pre-calling, got out of the ice bath, put a nice vest on, and then went and got our numbers, got our shoes on, got ready, and then straight out to the start line, where we had about 5 to 10 minutes to kind of jog around. Straight out of an ice bath, you don't really do a warm up, but for a race like that, there wasn't too much of a need in terms of warming up. The body got hot quick.
So when you're doing that pre-calling, are you got your own separate little quarters, or are you in there with other athletes and teams, or?
So they had quite a good setup. They had a separate tent with about maybe 6 different ice tubs, or kind of blow up bars, and our team had booked that. So Caden and myself both used that. I guess I was a bit surprised there wasn't that many people using it. I know the Australians were. And I guess considering the conditions, and there's plenty of good research out there about pre-calling, I was a bit surprised there was less people doing it. But everyone was different and had their preparation. I guess a lot of people struggled in the heat. I struggled in the heat with cramp and a few other things, and there was a big DNF rate in the women's and the men's. I think there was more in the women's race, but I mean they had the worst conditions of all the endurance events. They were first up. We just within the championships, the men, we got to look at the results and kind of how the walkers handled it, how the women handled it. So within that time, we even had learnings going into the event. But the women just they had it the hardest. They went in. They were the first to race in terms of the endurance, the outdoor events, and I think they had the hottest conditions of all. So, any of the women who finished that race, kudos to them. They did an amazing job.
Yeah, I can't remember what the numbers were, but it was a huge dropout. All right, let's go through the race. So you obviously you had your pacing strategy, you had all your nutrition. Were you picking up ice along the way, like?
So everyone kind of handled this one differently. There were stations, I think must have been about every 3.5K. So we had our team handing us, bottles and nutrition and things like that. Some people were kind of picking up, frozen scarves or frozen hats and, little packs of ice and things like that. I just picked up a bottle of Morton, which was straight out of a chiller. So that was ice cold. And I just got what I decided in terms of cooling is I just got so I picked up 2 bottles. I got one, maybe 750 ml of ice cold water, which I just dumped over my head. And that's, in terms of cooling, it's not going to do a lot in terms of, your core temperature, but perceptually, it really gives you a chill. So it was purely just a comfort perceptual thing, but that's what I did. So I grabbed one cold bottle of Morton, one cold bottle of water, and, all of my fluids were coming from Morton. And that was our strategy. So that was every 3.5K. We went out. So Caden and I, the other Kiwi, we ran pretty much the first half together. We went out again fairly conservatively, knowing the heat, knowing what could happen in the second half. So we were way back in maybe 55th or 60th through halfway. maybe mid 50s by halfway. But people were starting to drop off. People were, every 500 meters there'd be another person on the side of the road having pulled out. So yeah, we took that fairly conservative. I was feeling great at halfway, so I kind of pulled away from the group that were with us, and yes, was feeling great. Unfortunately, about 30k in, I started getting. I've never had this before, and I never had this in Cyprus in any of our preparation, but I started getting cramp in my hand, and I was like, oh, this is really strange. But I think it was, I'd been holding a bottle for quite a while, because you hang on to your bottle when you grab it, and you slowly drink it. So I was trying to mobilize my hands, and then I got cramp in my other hand, and I was like, oh, this is really strange. And yeah, long story short, kind of started to get cramp everywhere, hamstrings, calves, and alike. So it kind of got to maybe 7Ks to go, 35K mark, and I was just, look, there was kind of daylight behind me, there was almost daylight in front of me. So I had no idea what position I was in, but it came down to just getting to the finish line, and making sure I made it, because there was a few times I almost stumbled, calf cramps and things like that. So something strangely, like I said, we did runs in Cyprus in the heat where I was losing up to 5 liters of fluid. Never had any issues like this, and we were well prepared, and had all the nutrition and hydration strategy in place. But so that was a bit frustrating on the day. But like I said, I don't think I think one person may have picked me up, so I might have lost one place, and I think I still gained a couple in that last 7K. But it just meant I really had to shut it down and make sure I got to the finish line. And yeah, came in 27th. So yeah, I mean, I was. In hindsight, I was happy with the result, with the placing. I know there could have been a bit more there, but it's all learnings really, and hopefully can put that towards performance in Tokyo.
Yeah, definitely. Pick up another black singlet in a completely different scenario there. Did the sports science team look into like the cramping of that? Are they going to look into that? Do they look at what sort of how much minerals you're taking in per hour, or just to sort of get some learnings from that, or?
Yeah, definitely. And we've debriefed on it a couple of times, and still kind of, struggling to pinpoint what it is, because we thought we had a really robust strategy in place. But, it will, I guess it will mean in the next build up, and as we prepare for some heat in Sapporo, which won't quite be as hot as Tokyo. But, we'll be kind of testing a few more things and parameters and kind of different strategies, and going forward. But no, we've definitely debriefed with the team on that a couple of times, but still struggling to get to the bottom of it really.
Mate, let's move on to the big one, Seville 210. First of all, why Seville? Let's talk about why you went to Seville in Feb.
Seville is the time of year, so it's in late February, which is perfect because with the Olympics in August, all of the spring marathon racing in Europe, so what do you have? You've got Rotterdam, you've got London, the big ones. You've also got some of the German ones, either Hamburg or Frankfurt, and they are all in late April or around April, which, late April, you've got May, June, July. You've only really got 3 months, say, between London Marathon and the Olympics, which I just don't think is enough time to turn around and, have a really solid preparation. So I guess the plan was build up for Seville, which is end of Feb, and then if it goes well, I've got a really good block of time before the Olympics. If it doesn't go well, then I had London or a similar April marathon as a backup. So instead of just leaving it all up to one shot, I kind of had 2 opportunities lined up within the time frame available.
Did you ever think of Japan, like B1 or something like that, or?
Yeah, I did. I guess being based in Europe,
stick with the weather.
I've got so many good marathons here on my doorstep, and I kind of prefer to keep travel to a minimum pre-race. It's fantastic from Australia because the time difference is minimal, direct flights, and you can always guarantee some nice cool conditions in a lot of those Japanese marathons. Seville is also just known to have really stable weather in the winter. So I've been down there a couple of times. I did some pacemaking the year before, so I knew the course, and that was kind of all part of the plan was to go down, get some experience on the course, figure out the conditions a little bit. It's definitely a bit warmer. Obviously, it's right at the south of Spain, and it's February, so we've spent the whole winter building up, kind of, in probably 0 to 5 degrees for the majority of our morning sessions. So race day, they typically have sunny, calm, and 12 to 15 degrees.
Sounds awesome.
You can almost guarantee that there. Yeah. So that's kind of perfect. I actually flew back to New Zealand over the summer. First time I've been back for a couple of years. So we were back for Christmas. So actually got a couple of nice warm, maybe 3 weeks of nice warm training in New Zealand, and then was back in London for about the 5 weeks leading into Seville. But yeah, like I said before, it was it was a great build up. It was unbroken. It was consistent. And, even though that travel interruption in the middle, fortunately, very blessed to say things went well and things went smoothly, and I had a really consistent training block.
Look, it's 210. Like, again, you talk about your training block. You hadn't made any changes again. It was just the next sort of rung on the ladder to move up to, like another marathon. All that experience that you've got, a bit more confidence. I mean, 210s, it's a solid race. So I'd like to sort of delve into how do you think you were able to step up to that level?
Yeah, so I guess with the Olympic, the automatic Olympic qualifier being 2:11:30, ever since Dusseldorf, 12 months earlier, I was fairly confident that time was within my range, and I knew I had another 18 months or a year to kind of build towards that. Before Doha, I just based on kind of key sessions and key markers, I was fairly confident I was in 2:11:30, maybe sub 2:12 shape. But obviously going into the heat, you don't really get an opportunity to show that. And I guess that one of the main differences we made is my long runs. So I had probably, let's say of the 12 weeks pre-race, I probably had 9 weeks where I was running 38 to 40K on a Sunday. And that was, whereas previously I'd kind of done maybe 2 key long runs that were in that 40 to 42K range. That sort of, in the ballpark of 40K just became my standard Sunday. And it was never a jog. It was a steady run. It was a, steady run with 2x5K at marathon pace at the end. Or, there was a block of 10 miles in the middle that were 3:15s or, something like this. It was kind of, it was a workout. But that was every Sundays. Week. Yeah. Well, yeah, essentially. So probably, 8 or 9 of those 12 weeks. So yeah, I really focused on that being a key day. And then I have Monday and Tuesday, which are essentially just recovery days. So they're 2 easy runs. And then I get ready for a Wednesday workout. So I think on the back of that, I gained a lot of strength. And then I noticed my Wednesday workouts, which are kind of, they'll be a classic is kind of, let's say 5x3K off a 1K float. So, high volume sessions and fairly continuous. So it'll always have a float. And I just noticed those progressing really well as well. I think on the back of really putting the quality into those Sundays. So that was probably the biggest change. The mileage bumped again. I think my biggest week was about 195. So, there was a lot of weeks at kind of 185 to 190K. And that just became, again, that was just really on the back of consistently having that Sunday a bit longer and then getting a bit more quality on the Wednesdays. So it wasn't a conscious, we need to bump the mileage again. It just kind of naturally happened when I had a bit more quality in those 2 days. So yeah, I essentially just my 2 workouts are Wednesday and Sunday. Sometimes I would try and do a smaller speed session. So, maybe something light, but like 5x1K on a Friday, or some fartlek just to kind of keep that leg turnover going. But, I was finding, with such good quality on a Wednesday, I just wasn't ready to do those workouts on a Friday. So, I'd do a medium long run, or I'd do some hill, some short hills or something to keep that mechanics there. But yeah, what we found is we ended up just dropping the Friday workout because, Wednesday and Sunday were going really well. And I just wasn't recovered. So yeah, when those 2 days got bigger, I needed more recovery, obviously. But I think that was a good formula for me.
No, definitely. And were you running with it with a group? You got a good little group to train with over there, or?
Not really. So East London, where I was, there's a few athletes around, but I guess definitely no groups, and it wasn't a good time. Paul wasn't building up for a race at that point, so I essentially did the build up on my own. And when you're fitting training around work hours, you're very strict on what times you run and where you run, because you've got to finish at work and you've got to be at work by this time. So yeah, fitting in with the group when you're training around work hours is pretty difficult. So yeah, I mean, unfortunately the majority of it was on my own. Yeah, which is hard. And I kind of said to my coach, my wife, afterwards, I was like, I don't think I can do that again. A build up like that, essentially solo. So yeah, that's part of the reason for a change down Teddington Way, where there's definitely more athletes around here. And yeah, try and use that and get more support and have a bit more of a group around me, which I'm looking forward to.
Yeah, definitely on those Sunday runs when you've got those pace sections in it. Doing those on your own is pretty tough. Even if you had someone on a bike to help give you some drinks or some nutrition or something, but yeah, those ones on your own would just be tough. Hopefully, like you said, with the move and surrounded by some more runners, yeah, you might be able to get some good solid groups together.
Yeah, absolutely. So that there's definitely more guys down this way, and I've got a bit more flexibility with work now from working from home, so that's nice, and I can work around that a bit more. Put work a little bit more around training rather than the other way around, which will be a nice change. So yeah, I'm looking forward to it. I'm kind of just building back into training after a few injury issues. But yeah, no, it's I'm really looking forward to being here.
Now let's talk about your race nutrition. Obviously, running from the track to into road marathon, nutrition becomes a big factor all of a sudden. Something you need to put a lot of thought into. You've had some really good marathons there. Is that something you've had to work on, or is it something that hasn't really caused you too many problems, or like what is your current formula for taking in the fluids and nutrition on race day?
Yeah, thankfully it's not something I've struggled with so far. I take Morton, and I haven't really changed that. So
Is that the
yeah,
gel,
I
the
started
drink,
using
or
it.
the gel?
The drink,
Yeah.
yeah.
Mm.
I find the gels very, very thick and kind of hard to, you've almost got to chew them rather than swallowing them. So, I like getting some fluid, and I just, to be honest, I haven't tried many things, but I haven't had any problems with Morton, and I really like it. So yeah, I've stuck with it. And yeah, I mean, it's I take the 320, which is the more concentrated version. So over the marathon, you don't take on much fluid at all. But it's just enough to kind of offset a little bit of the loss, so you're not going into too much of a, you get slightly more efficient the more dehydrated you get. But obviously that only works to a certain point until the dehydration effect starts negatively impacting. As you dehydrate, you get a little bit lighter, so you technically get a little bit more efficient. So yeah, you want to take on some fluid. That's probably, maybe around a litre over the 2 hours, but over 2 hours.
So you're just picking up your
So
5K bottles and drinking to how you feel, or is there a certain amount that you want to drink?
I essentially generally take 2 sachets over the length of the marathon.
Okay.
So that's about 80 grams an hour, roughly. Yeah, so that's what I do, and that's 2 sachets with 500 mils each. So yeah, a litre over that time. So I generally try and take it all on. And haven't had any issues getting it down. In Sevilla, I actually missed about 4 of my bottles. We had a fairly big group, and there was 1 or 2 guys who were just causing problems in the pack, and racing to the front, grabbing a bottle. And there was one guy who was obviously pacing a friend, and he'd run to the front of the pack, so he'd kind of go around the outside, grab a bottle, stop, turn around, and look for his friend, and we'd just all crash into him. And I was losing my mind. So yeah, this happened about 3 times, and I think I was getting fired up and giving him some words. And then he obviously stopped after that, or either he dropped out and faded back. But yeah, it was, I missed 4 bottles. I think one of my friends gave me some of his. So to be honest, I didn't get anywhere near what we were planning, but I think with the Morton, and you're getting so many carbs, and it's such an efficient fuel that even if you miss a few, it gives me a bit of confidence not to get too stressed out next time when I miss a bottle or two, because I knew I only got a fraction of the bottles I was planning to in Seville, but definitely didn't kind of go into any sort of deficit or run out of fuel. Yeah, that's when you're using something really good and really efficient, then you can be confident it's going to go the distance.
Right, yeah. So have you got a spot on the team for Tokyo with that 210?
No, not yet. So our teams won't be confirmed until, to be honest, I don't actually know what the date is. It'll be, final announcements. We'll wait till all qualifying's finished, and then each federation is kind of given I think they're given a quota, and then they've kind of got to select athletes around these quotas.
So where are you sitting on the table of runners under the 2:11:30?
So there's currently two Kiwis with the time, Zane Robertson and myself. We're absolutely expecting Jake Robertson to get the time, but he's still got to line up and find a marathon, which is actually proving more difficult than anything at the moment. And then there's others. Caden Shields still hasn't competed yet, and there's another. Yeah, there's Dan Jones. He's another 2:16 guy. So, there's still definitely more guys to race. We have 3 spots. Hopefully, we'll be able to fill them. But I'm feeling relatively confident at the moment, having that time and kind of being almost a minute and a half under the automatic standard, rather than just a couple of seconds under. So yeah, no, I'm feeling relatively confident. But it's not all tied up until qualifying closes and names are announced.
So all going well, it's August next year is the marathon, is that right?
Yes.
Yep. So what would you do? Would you do another marathon before then?
Well, the plan was to be racing in Valencia. So that's in the beginning of December. Unfortunately, I won't be racing there. I've had a bit of a groin abductor issue, which has cropped up a few times over the summer, and I just wasn't getting in the work that I need to be ready to run Valencia, and kind of pushing and being a bit risky to make a start line at this point. Just there's no need. So yeah, I won't be racing Valencia, which kind of means that I probably won't get a marathon before the Olympics, mainly because all the majors have been moved until the autumn. So October. Seville has just been postponed until the autumn. So yeah, actually finding a race in Europe is going to be quite hard if I wanted to do something in the come springtime. I think Houston is the other one that's also in February. That's been postponed, I gather. So it's. At the moment, thankfully, fortuitously, I've got the qualifier, so I don't need to be kind of frantically trying to find a start line. And at the moment, I just need to, my goal for the end of the year is just to get healthy, and get back to being consistent, because I think the consistency over the summer is just what I've really missed. I had a month or two off with this issue initially. I did a lot of cycling. I had a great training block in St. Moritz, and then since then I've kind of, issues flared up a couple of times. So we've just stepped back, taken the pressure off, trying to get ready for a start line, and just plan is to get healthy, get consistent, and get the mileage back up again before January 1st. Hopefully things are all on track, and we have a really solid plan in place.
Yeah, well, it's certainly a better position to be in. With having that qualifier, it'd be tough to be the runners, as you mentioned, that still have to try to find a marathon to qualify in.
And so many guys missed their opportunity. Like, everyone was lining up for a London marathon in April this year. I knew a lot of guys getting ready for Rotterdam, and just all of those big spring marathons. So many guys missed out, and it's heartbreaking for them, because they'd committed just as much and put massive training blocks and big sacrifices in place to get ready for their Olympic qualifying opportunity. So yeah, it's heartbreaking for all those guys to miss out. Hopefully everyone gets their shot and gets their opportunity come early 2021.
Did Caden not have an option to race in London that was just on a few weeks ago?
I I'm not sure. I think they prioritized all of the athletes who were the elite field who was confirmed in April.
Oh, okay, right.
So Caden wasn't in that field. So I think they prioritized those athletes. There was definitely additions, but it was all confirmed quite late. So it was kind of only confirmed 7 or 8 weeks out. So some athletes were kind of caught on the back foot a little bit. But the difficulty is with New Zealand at the moment, travel in and out is essentially off the cards. So just popping over to Europe for a marathon is just not as easy as it was. And there's 2 weeks of quarantine when you get back, and you pay for that if you've just been traveling. If you're returning home permanently, you don't have to fork out for that expense. But yeah, it's government guidelines are essentially no international travel is recommended. So yeah, it's a difficult one for athletes there at the moment. They're in a bit of a tricky position, and that's, I guess, that was one of the reasons we decided to stay in Europe, because even though you've got a much worse situation with COVID and a much more difficult lockdown and more restrictions on life here, I think at the end of the day there is a little more flexibility and the ability to kind of get away to St. Moritz and there are still some racing opportunities going on here with elite fields, with London and Valencia and things like that. So that's, I guess, one of the reasonings we had for staying.
You spent a bit of time over the Netherlands racing and living. What was that to do with a work opportunity and a new place to live and train, or?
So we, my wife and I, probably close to 5 years ago now, we headed to Europe. We kind of had the intention of not going to London. Just we knew what London life was like, and we knew a lot of people there, but we wanted to do something different. And I love the Netherlands. It's a fantastic country. They have an amazing kind of quality of life, and so we found we went over without jobs. We found jobs relatively quickly, and yeah, we loved it. It's an amazing place, an amazing country. And yeah, loved it. They have a fantastic racing scene as well. So they have some, not so many track races. A lot of the track racing, there's a big scene in kind of Belgium, but they have some great road racing. So if you look back at the history of all the road world records, they've all been held in the Netherlands at some point. So you've got a couple of the big athlete management agencies are Dutch. So Kipchoge's manager, Bekele, they're all part of a Dutch agency called Global Sports. So they can bring a lot of those top guys and race locally in the Netherlands and set up really good opportunities. Yeah, I love the road racing scene. Just about every weekend you could find a sub 30-minute 10K, and you can make a bit of cash on the side, and it's fun. And so all of a lot of Scandinavian, German, French, Italian athletes, they all, I guess, around the Benelux area, they all head to the Netherlands for the road racing, the spring and autumn road seasons. So yeah, that was fun. That was one reason to be there, but also just to head to Europe to be over here. I'd previously traveled every year to Europe or to the US to do blocks of racing, and that's expensive and I take big chunks of time off work, whereas when I'm here, it's just it's easy to get there, travel on a Friday, race on a Saturday or Sunday, and then back to work on Monday. So it was partly for that opportunity, but also just to live in Europe and kind of some additional work opportunities over here as well.
So between now and Tokyo, obviously the next couple of months is to getting healthy again, and then getting that strength back into the legs. Will you do any shorter races, or it'll just be all fully focused on that marathon?
The goal is to do a bit more racing. I mean, it's going to be more a matter of what's available, really. But even over the summer here this year, we saw quite a bit of racing go ahead, under the conditions. So I'm fully expecting there'll be more road racing, and come the spring 2021. It'll be quite nice to not focus on a marathon. I guess I haven't been able to do much other racing in terms of distances because I've run 2 marathons a year, and all of your prep is focused around those. So I'm definitely going to line up 1 or 2 half marathons, all going to plan, and have a crack at a good time there. And yeah, maybe some 10Ks on the road or similar, just to touch back into that distance again, which has just been neglected a little bit because it's been kind of chasing one qualifier after another, where I've had to line up and race marathons, whereas now I've got the opportunity to step back and do some more and shorter races, which will be fun. I'm hoping.
Now let's talk about injuries. Is there anything that in particular that they have seen? Let's talk about the physios or whatever it might be. They feel you need to fix up, or is there any weaknesses that they say this is leading to this or this is leading to that, or is it all those injuries haven't really been consistent with one sort of deficiency, and is strength and conditioning something you've actually had to put a lot more effort into? One, for strength of the marathon running, and two, to minimise the risk of these injuries coming back or getting more?
Yeah, I mean, early, in my late teens, early 20s, like I said, I had a couple of stress fractures and kind of more bone-related issues. Whereas the last couple of years, thankfully, I've had a really good run without too many injuries, but I've had a couple of tendon issues, which I guess are actually more difficult in terms of recovery, because a stress fracture is fairly textbook in terms of its recovery, and as long as you look after it. Whereas tendons take a lot of rehab. There's not really any fixed time frame on how long they can take. So yeah, that's been a bit of a learning curve in terms of dealing with those. I've probably had maybe 2 or 3 kind of a hamstring and an abductor issue. So strength S&C is definitely a big part of my training at the moment. It probably only has been for about the last kind of 2 or 3 years, where I've really focused on it. But fitting 2 sessions in the gym around 185, 190k and work it's hard. And gym is kind of the first thing to drop out when you're tired and you're stressed and you just don't have time for it, and you need to prioritize sleep over a gym session. I think having the Wednesdays off for me was a big change, because previously it would kind of be 35Ks with a workout in the morning, 9 hours at work, and then a jog and gym in the evening, and then going to bed. And that just really that would put me on the back foot till the end of the week, when then I spend the whole weekend recovering. So having that day off and having the time to focus and recover properly has been really beneficial, and allowed me to really focus on that gym work a lot. So your S&C is always adapting to kind of what you're dealing with at the time, and what you might be rehabbing from, or an issue that's been hanging around. So we're constantly kind of tweaking the strength and conditioning around the current situation, and what we might be any niggles you might be balancing or dealing with. But I do a fairly, on the whole, I do a fairly basic, strength routine. I kind of don't tailor it, periodize it too much. It's just a fairly, a bit of lifting, really good core and single leg stability type of routine.
All right, let's think next year, Olympics goes ahead, you go to the marathon, you have an awesome race. That's going to happen. After that,
Good.
the following
Like
year, all right, 2022, it's pretty exciting. Eugene, Oregon, the world champs. Is that something you'd like to, pick up another black singlet for and race over there? I mean, that'd be an awesome place to be part of a meet over there.
Yeah, well, I mean, amazing for most track runners, because they're going to have, well, for anyone in the Commonwealth, you've got the Commonwealth Games as well in Birmingham. So the difficulty for a marathoner is you can really only pick one of those, whether it's World Champs in Eugene or Commonwealth Games in Birmingham. So yeah, I think they've, for some of the European, maybe it's primarily just the British athletes, they essentially have World Champs, Europeans, and Com Games. I think they're all lining up, and yeah, there's only a couple of countries that will fall into that bracket of all 3. I think for me, I'd probably prefer Birmingham, just because I haven't competed at Com Games.
Sure.
Yeah, so Eugene would be amazing. It's a track and field town, and it would be amazing to race there. But I think I'd be leaning towards Birmingham at this stage. Just I've had 1 World Champs in Doha. Fingers crossed the Olympics, and to be able to tick off the Commonwealth Games as well would be fantastic.
Yeah, no, that makes a lot of sense. So what month of the year would Birmingham be?
Ooh, I'd have to have a look at this. I think they've got World Champs a little bit earlier. and then Birmingham is after. So the World Champs may be
I got Worlds in
July-ish.
July. Yeah.
Yeah, World's July. I think Com Games might be August. But yeah, I'd need to check up on that one.
Yeah. Okay.
It's a bit far in the future to be
Yeah.
pinning dates down at the moment.
Yeah. No, that would be a nice triple black. Yeah. Yeah. Worlds, Coms, and Olympics, mate. That would be fantastic. Mate, you got yourself obviously going to get a good group of runners over there around Bushy Park. Are we ever going to see you back home in New Zealand, mate, sort of chasing sheep around the paddocks in gumboots, or like what's the long-term future? You can't be away from home forever.
No, no. Yeah, it's I guess with the Olympics being pushed out a year and then kind of COVID throwing curveball, it's changed up our plans a little bit. But I mean, New Zealand's always home.
Mm,
So no, we'll definitely be back. When that is, I mean, your guess is as good as mine at the moment, to be honest.
mm, mm.
It's something we try and reassess every now and then. But yeah, I mean, at the moment, Olympics is the goal. We just need to get that out of the way, and then kind of see where we are from there. I mean, we love living in Europe. It's fantastic. I'd love to live back on the continent again. It's just I mean the travel and the lifestyle is amazing. And we love it, and we love exploring Europe. So, yeah, I don't know if we're quite finished here yet, but until we know we're in Europe till after the Olympics, and from there we'll make some more decisions going forward. But New Zealand's it'll always be home, so it will be home again. I think my mum will be pretty happy to. I have to remind her that every now and then.
Sure, sure, definitely. Yeah, there's some pretty awesome trail races over there too, mate. So when you get sort of slow like the rest of us, you can jump in and run some mountains with us. Is that something you'd ever consider doing? The ultra trails around New Zealand?
Uh, I I don't think I've ever had too much of an inkling heading that way. I was listening to a podcast on with Jonathan Wyatt, just absolute Kiwi legend of
Yeah, yeah.
every discipline possible. No, I mean, I think that the trail running would be fun. Any of the real mountain stuff is probably definitely out of my wheelhouse. I lived in the Netherlands for 2.5 years, and I lived in East London for another 2.5 years, and those are both very flat places.
Yeah, yeah.
So I used to have to catch the train and head up north of London to a place called Epping Forest to run any hills. So yeah, no, I don't think I'll head to the mountains, but some trail stuff would be fun. And I think that'll be definitely more down the more of the enjoyable end of my career rather than the highly competitive end at the moment, which hopefully can focus on and run a bit faster over.
Yeah, yeah, no, I was thinking more into the old years, mate.
Yeah, I mean, there's some fantastic events out there. Tarawera,
Mm,
down on the South Island, New Zealand. There's some really iconic races.
mm.
So no, I'd love to have a go at a few of those, but I think I'll keep it risk free and stick on the roads for the meantime. Probably heard I'm not the most robust runner out, so too much twisting and turning is probably not the best thing for me at the moment.
On the other end, it might strengthen you up a little bit. You know what I mean? All that movement, the lateral
Yeah,
movement. Yeah.
yeah.
Hicksy, really appreciate giving us your time today, mate. It's a great story. Obviously, some fantastic chapters coming. Really looking forward to seeing how your prep goes and seeing you pull on that black singlet over there at the Olympics. We're all hoping as much as you that Olympics goes ahead, but I think it's looking more promising than ever. So I'm fingers crossed that it is going to go ahead, mate. And yeah, hopefully you get on top of those injuries, get healthy again, get that prep going, get some good racing, get that speed back in the legs, and go over there to Tokyo and just crush it, mate. So yeah, all the best for that, mate.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you, and appreciate having the chat and having the time to reminisce on a few races and events in the years gone by. But yeah, like you said, absolutely. If anyone's going to get it right, I think we can trust the Japanese organising committee to make it happen. So yeah, I've got faith in them, and yeah, still crossing my fingers in the background.
Yeah, and I think it's going to be more special than ever just because of the delay in the COVID whole thing. I think it'll be something really, really special. So yeah, like I said, mate, looking forward to seeing you there. Maybe rubbing shoulders with a couple of Aussies and see what happens at the end there, mate. And, maybe we'll see you toe the line back here in Oz, soon too. I see that
Yeah.
Zatopek's going to be on in January, so at least that's going to go ahead, so that's good. So yeah, a lot of
it's great to see some races kicking off again.
yeah, it is. We're all keen as to get some racing back over here. We've been pretty lucky here in the ACT. We've had a few races, but thank you so much again, Hicksy. I'm going to go to bed, mate. Sunday long run in the morning, mate. The boys will go out there and probably crush me, so I better get to bed, mate.
Good work, good on you, and
All
thanks
right.
again for the chat.
Thank you, mate. Bye, mate.